Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today, just one day before the New Hampshire primary. Let's start with some problems for Hillary Clinton in our Good Martini. This is courtesy of the Washington Post. On the eve of the New Hampshire primary, Hillary Clinton's quest to become the country's first female president has encountered an unexpected problem. She is having trouble persuading women, young and old, to rally behind her cause. The latest sign came Sunday when a new CNN WMUR survey showed Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont beating Clinton among women by 8 percentage points, a big shift from last week where Clinton won women by 11 points in the Iowa caucuses. And so, Jim, you'd think that Hillary Clinton would then try to make the case to women, perhaps talk about some issues where she and Sanders differ. Nope, we're just going to threats and mockery, thanks to some surrogates. One came from former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, with Hillary Clinton, I assure you, laughing uproariously in the background after Albright said this.
You have to help. Hillary Clinton will always be there for you. And just remember, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help each other.
Oh, but we're not done. Gloria Steinem, the feminist, apologizing Sunday for saying on a TV appearance Friday night that younger women were supporting Sanders because, quote, the boys are with Bernie. So, Jim, after all this time that we're supposedly demeaning women, they're going to hell if they don't vote for Hillary. And the only reason they want Bernie Sanders is because they're looking to find a boyfriend.
So one of my continuing theories of politics, Greg, is that the reason you become progressive is that it's kind of like the old Catholic Church used to sell indulgences,
yes.
Right? If you pray to the right progressive God, you can basically do whatever the heck you want and not really have any consequences. Can you think of anything more condescending than, those young women, they're just boy crazy, you know. They're swooning at the sight of that robust, manly Bernie Sanders. Or I guess the idea is that young Democratic men are supporting Bernie Sanders, and thus young Democratic women are, little hearts are coming out of their heads. Ladies, let me just say, Republican men are out there. And maybe even a little higher in the testosterone category. They're not low energy, despite what you might have heard. Even the Jeb Bush supporters are icons of manliness compared to this. No, it's just the most condescending thing you could possibly imagine. So on my plane back from New Hampshire, Greg, who was sitting a few rows ahead of me but Madeleine Albright? Now, she's not looking great. If I'd been a younger and more obnoxious type, I might have gone up to her and said, hey, so when women should stand with other women, are you willing to stand with Juanita Broderick? Are you willing to stand with Kathleen Willey? Are you willing to stand with Paula Jones and all these other women? Are you sure? Secretary Albright is getting up there in years, and I didn't want to be a jerk harassing her on the plane. So, we'll never know exactly how she would have responded to that. But God, the arrogance of these one, feminist icon, and two, the first woman Secretary of State. Look, votes have to be earned, right? Nobody owes you their vote because of their genitalia or because of their skin color, because of anything like that. Good heavens. The more you deal with progressivism, the more it seems like a philosophy in which you can say and do whatever you want, and no one will ever, and no one is allowed to think of you as a bad person because you believe the right things according to the political party. And to me, it's a twisted philosophy. And it's kind of good to see Albright and Steinem getting some serious blowback for this.
Yeah, two quick thoughts here. First of all, and we've talked about this before, is how often the Clinton campaign plays this card. One of the really smart tactical things Obama did in 2008 was not bringing it up very much. He had to in certain situations, like Jeremiah Wright. But people are smart enough to realize that she's a woman. You don't constantly have to tell people all the time that that's your basic calling card and your main explanation for why you should be elected president. I think it's getting to the point where women are offended that she keeps dropping this on them.
Here's the other thing. I think the contrast with Carly Fiorina is pretty good, right? I mean, and by the way, pointing out that up in New Hampshire, she was not allowed to participate in a debate. She wasn't polling well enough. And she played a little bit of the ABC is sexist card. And it's a little frustrating to watch somebody on the right do that. We can all look at Carly Fiorina. We know she's a woman. And generally, you watch her up on that stage, you can tell generally she's a pretty strong woman. She's an accomplished woman. Like, it's got to be subtext, not text. And Hillary Clinton keeps, emphasizing, like, look, At one point we discussed at one of our martinis last week, she genuinely insisted because she was a woman, she could not be part of the political establishment.
Right.
Which is just non sequitur.
Exactly. Oh, man, those women polling numbers have got to be just horrific for the Clinton campaign. The only people more upset yesterday than the Clintons were probably Cam Newton and Eli Manning. His face when they clinched that game was amazing.
First of all, two observations. One is I remember when Eli won his first Super Bowl against the Patriots. I need to mention that for all the Patriot fans out there. That I remember, there was the year after Peyton Manning had won his first Super Bowl with the Colts.
Yes.
He was up in one of the luxury boxes, and they cut to him. And I could just see Peyton Manning applauding and cheering. And I thought about what a great feeling that has to be. That you've won the Super Bowl, you got the monkey off your back, nobody's going to say that you're, a flop. And now you get to see your little brother, who you've been playing with since you were little, do the same thing. That must be a really wonderful feeling. And you'd like to think Eli would have that. And apparently not.
Oh, man. All right, on to the Bad Martini now. And the Bad and Crazy both come from the Saturday night debate on ABC, and both of them come courtesy of Martha Raddatz, quite frankly. But she's mainly featured here in the Bad Martini. Just before the debate started, we got news reports that North Korea test-fired a long-range intercontinental ballistic missile. And so she posed the question to Ted Cruz, what would you do about that? And he said, well, this is proof that you need to stop countries from getting nuclear weapons, so that's why the Iran deal's terrible. In the meantime, we need a missile shield in South Korea because they want one, and we should probably prevent North Korean satellites from going up because they could do damage to our power grid. Raddatz wasn't happy with that, though, so she followed up with this.
Well, let me ask you this. If you were commander-in-chief tonight, would you have ordered the U.S. military to destroy that missile preemptively on the launch pad to prevent North Korea from becoming an even graver threat?
At this point, I'm not going to speculate on that without the intelligence briefing that any commander-in-chief would have, knowing what exactly is there. One of the real problems...
Senator Cruz, let me tell you this. You have talked tough about the Mideast. You haven't gotten those intelligence briefings about that. Why not tell us whether you would preemptively strike a missile on a launch pad that threatens the U.S.?
Actually, with respect, I have gotten the intelligence briefings on the Mideast. Those have been going on for many years. I haven't gotten the intelligence briefing tonight on what North Korea is doing because I'm here in New Hampshire.
Senator Cruz, I will say that missile has been sitting there for quite some time, and they have had eyes on it.
Martha, just to clarify on that point, because he's right, and one more thing to point, it is standard procedure of the United States to shoot down those missiles once launched if they pose a threat to civilians, land, or ships.
Senator Rubio, I'm talking about a preemptive strike.
Jim, if the woman was going to debate Saturday, it should have been Fiorina. Secondly, Martha Raddatz, she just can't accept the fact that she's not going to get a crazy Dr. Strangelove Republican who just wants to nuke everything in sight with that question.
I was going to say, welcome to the New Hampshire Republican debate. I'm Martha Raddatz, and I know more than you. That was the subtext of all of those questions. And look, I think it's perfectly fair to ask these guys. So what's your strategy on North Korea? Asking candidates about, foreign policy crises here and now. One, they're not in the position to do much about it. And two, while they get decent amount of intelligence briefings up on Capitol Hill, Cruz's answer was perfectly fair. It had just happened that evening. You'd like to think the President of the United States would have a fuller picture of what's going on than a senator who's been traipsing around New Hampshire for the past week. And, oh, by the way, he's ignoring his job. Now, come on, It was a perfectly fine, cautious response. He wants a full picture of this. And instead, Raddatz has to go, well, you've been talking tough and all that stuff. Look, no, that's Christie's line, okay? That's what he's there to do. It's not the job of the moderator. And, look, actually, I stand totally corrected. I'm going to correct you, Greg, and say you're totally wrong. There was a fantastic female moderator in that debate. There was Mary Catherine Ham, our friend who did a fantastic job. And Martha Raddatz, I was underwhelmed with her in the vice presidential debate. I don't understand why she keeps getting these, rave reviews when each one is supposed to be, look, I'm a Pentagon correspondent. I know a lot about these topics, and I think all of you candidates are a bunch of phonies. And it's just an insufferable tone that basically is kind of lecturing the candidates for not giving extremely detailed answers in these 60 seconds ABC gives them to lay things out.
But Raddatz was not done. She asked another question as we transition to the Crazy Martini. It was an issue that came up in the past week that had to deal with the military and a potential future draft.
Just this week, the military leaders of the Army and Marine Corps said that they believe young women, just as young men are required to do, should sign up for selective service in case the draft is reinstated. Many of you have young daughters. Senator Rubio, should young women be required to sign up for selective service in case of a national emergency?
Well, first let me say there are already women today serving in roles that are like combat, that in fact whose lives are in very serious danger. And so I have no problem whatsoever with people of either gender serving in combat, so long as the minimum requirements necessary to do the job are not compromised. But I support that. And obviously, if now that is the case, I do believe that selective service should be opened up for both men and women in case a draft is ever instituted.
Jeb Bush then agreed with that and made the point that the draft isn't currently in play. And Raddatz said but it could be. And Jeb said, but it's not. And then she went to Chris Christie, who said this.
There's no reason why one young woman should be discriminated against from registering for the Selective Service. The fact is, we need to be a party and a people that makes sure that our women in this country understand anything they can dream, anything that they want to aspire to, they can do.
Yeah, it's called enlisting, if you really dream to do that. Jim, this is a major shift for the Republicans who have been opposed to women in combat for a long time, and the idea that women who could potentially be very physically fit but have no interest in military service could one day be drafted and thrust into combat. The Marines have explained how it could hurt combat readiness, and it looks like Republicans are so eager not to be the party of the war against women that they're willing to fold on this. Ted Cruz, later, he wasn't asked about it, put out a statement saying he was against it, but that moment on the debate for Republicans I thought was not a good one.
No, I completely agree, Greg. Everyone was talking about Rubio, but this was the one that really left me baffled and a little bit shaken. I'll give you two. First of all, once again, Raddatz kind of really blurred the line between registering for selective service and the draft. We've not had a draft since the 1970s, and most people would say we're, short of a Russian invasion like in Red Dawn or something, we're not going to see the draft come back. The experience with it demonstrated that it is extraordinarily socially divisive. People contend that it's not fair. We are much better off with a volunteer army. And the really good news is there are plenty of Americans who want to serve their country if you treat them well. If you don't spit on them when they return from war, if you celebrate them, if you salute them, if you compensate them, and if you take care of them when they come back with a functioning Veterans Administration, you will never have a shortage of Americans who are willing to wear their country's uniform. So we have a draft in case of emergency. It's behind glass, and we're probably never going to use it. The idea that first of all, Greg, are there any men in America who registered for selective service who feel like they've been victimized?
I don't think so.
Because it's not fair that women don't have to do this. Like, it took 10 minutes when you were 18 to go to the post office. That's all the government has asked you to do. That in case of emergency, in case the Russians come, in case the Chinese come, like in the sequel to Red Dawn. I'm sorry, it was the North Koreans. We dare not offend our Chinese distribution networks. In that case, we can find you, we can draft you, and we can send you into the military. That's the only thing the government has ever added. It doesn't seem like too much. The idea of adding women to the military, there's a huge difference between drafting them or having them register for selective service or having them volunteer. Now, here is my paranoid suspicion, Greg. 4 years ago, around this time, it was a New Hampshire debate, and out of nowhere, Clinton Foundation donor George Stephanopoulos, who moonlights as an ABC News anchor, out of nowhere asked a question about birth control. And you could see Mitt Romney was genuinely surprised by that. And his answer basically amounts to, don't touch birth control. I mean, we're not going to touch birth control. Or why are we talking about birth control? Ann and I are done. It was this very bizarre out of the blue question, but it set up the war on women. Republicans are going to take away your birth control argument. Greg, am I a crazy paranoid Art Bell listener if I say this is leading up to the crazy warmongering Republicans are going to send your daughters to war? There wasn't much basis to the Republicans are coming to take the condoms and birth control pills and all that other stuff from the 2012 campaign. My sneaky suspicion is that when you see a really bizarre gender-based question come out of nowhere at an ABC-sponsored debate, go to red alert. We've seen this happen before. My suspicion is that they're going to try to claim that Republicans are crazed warmongers because we have the audacity to say that the current approach to ISIS and Al Qaeda and all the other threats around the world aren't working. And they're going to try to say that because of these statements, Republicans are going to send your little daughters, with pigtails into war. And It'll be a bizarre irony in which the Democrats will try to say they're chivalrous and all that kind of stuff. I could be totally wrong on this. And if you say, hey, if 6 months from now nothing's come out of this, you can say, Jim, you were totally wrong. But if they do this, we've been warned. This is the same playbook. They're going to try it again. And I think Rubio and Jeb may have stepped in it by kind of seeming to eagerly agree with the idea that it'd be fine to have women register for Selective Service.
Potentially. The one thing I would say in contrast to that is that it's Obama and Ash Carter and Panetta, a couple of defense secretaries ago, who got the ball rolling in this direction. So it's certainly a Democratic administration policy that did this. What do you think?
Greg, consistent. The party of the Torricelli maneuver is not going to let a little thing like ideological or policy consistency get in the way of winning. But carry on. I'm sorry.
My question is why the wholesale change among Republicans?
That's a really fair question, and I think you kind of put your finger on it in the introduction to this, Martini, that because they're so terrified of the war on women that the instinctive response is to say, no, I like women. In fact, I believe women can do anything, so we should treat them totally equally. Even though I could be wrong, I have not seen American women clamoring for registering for Selective Service. Women are not marching in the streets saying, please keep us in mind if there's a draft, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's such a bizarre, small, obscure issue that for it to get major debate time, just got my spidey senses tingling.
Well, we've been at this a long time, so I think there's a good chance something else could come down the pike along those lines. So the New Hampshire surprise, that's what we got to start calling that if, in fact, this happens. But, Jim, busy weekend. I know you had a great time up there with the National Review Party, so buckle up. As John Kasich said, you need to buy one if he gets elected president for those first 100 days. So buckle up for tomorrow, and we'll see how things shake out here in the next couple of days.
A lot to talk about in the next couple of days, Greg. Looking forward to it.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Columbus of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today, and tune in again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.